Welcome back to another episode of Excuse My Grandma. It's Kim and my co-host.
Grandma Gail.
Grandma, what is new with you?
Well, you're back here for a week or so that's been fun. We've been doing a lot of things together, which is neat. And
yes, we're here in Palm Beach together as roommates once again.
Right, exactly. And it's been hot, so the weather's been really perfect for walking and doing our outside videos, which is always fun. And I've gone to Kravis several times this week, the Kravis Center, which is a cultural center in Palm Beach. And it's given us wonderful plays and concerts over the last several years, which adds a great cultural addition to this life here in Florida. And this week I went to listen to a lecture on James Dean, who was a great actor of the 50s. And you know who he was.
Yeah, all I know about him is he's a rebel without a cause.
Exactly.
But I haven't seen him in anything else.
Well, he was in East of Eden, and he was also in Giant, which was his last film. At the age of 24, he was in a car crash that with his new Porsche and died, as were the other two stars in his film in Giant, also died the same year. Saul Mineo was stabbed to death. And Montgomery Clift also died tragically. So you lost three very young people in their 20s after that film was shot.
It's crazy that he died so young, and that happened with other stars at the time too, like Marilyn, and it kept them like frozen in time. But I couldn't imagine if that happened to a celebrity now.
Well, it does happen, I'm sure, often. But you know,
like 24-year-olds.
24 is pretty. It was a pretty scary thing. But you know, in those days, they lived on the edge. A lot of these stars. He was a young man with great talent, James Dean, and according to the lecturer, he had he was a very good student. He decided early on he wanted to be an actor, went to New York and studied, and then got his first role in East of Eden. You know, he was always looked like the tortured teenager, which was his persona, and of course he didn't live very long, so we always see him the same way as the handsome guy on the screen.
That's with the leather jacket.
Exactly. So that was very interesting. And, you know, it adds something when you're with a group of people and you listen to these stories about stars in the 50s and 60s and even the 70s, who were really great stars. You don't have, you have stars today, but somehow the movies are not the same. That's what I think the difference. There are very few great films that you can really think about and that will live forever. Certainly not any of the ones that are flying around with animated objects.
Although when those were happening at the time, those films, did you know the day they came out, oh, this is going to be a hit? Or is it only in hindsight that we look back and say it's a classic? Because maybe the movies today, we need like a few years to look back and say, oh, those were great.
Well, I think that's true. But I do think when these films came out, you see, the studios were so powerful and so large, and they really were so much a part of the American cultural scene that we knew when the good movies really came out. And most of them were up for Academy Awards, as was he. In all the films he was nominated, didn't win, James Dean, but he was nominated for both films that he was in. So we knew that he was a great star, and we thought we were going to have him much longer than his 24 years. And I think in retrospect, the Academy should have given him the 2 Academy Awards right then, but they probably didn't want to give a 22 and a 23-year-old an award. So, but they were great films. They spoke of a different time in America. You know, they weren't, even in those days, they weren't au courant. They were talking about the past, and they're definitely a must-see now.
Well, I can't say I've done much besides working this week on our podcast and videos and stuff. I've seen friends down here that were here for the long holiday weekend.
Well, you went to Trivial Pursuit. Didn't you do?
I did a trivia night at the Colony Hotel, which they do every Monday. It wasn't super big. Well, it's always packed, actually, but it wasn't as young this past week.
Well, I think people start, you know, you got to give it during the spring break when all families come down. You'll get many more young people at those things.
Maybe.
If you're down here then.
Yeah, but that was fun. And My birthday's coming up this Friday.
Oh my
so
gosh, Kimberly celebrates her birthday for at least 4 weeks. This is like an amazing
I actually
event.
really don't care this year.
Oh, thank heavens you're getting mature. It's not a major birthday. It's a birthday, which every birthday is a good day.
Yeah.
But we had some people for dinner on Sunday night, and we had a cake, and everybody blew out the candle. It was a pre-birthday.
Yeah, over a week in advance, just because I knew my friends would be in Palm Beach during that time, some of them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like there wasn't like a huge thing to like celebrate or something that I've really been wanting to do. So I just wasn't like, I'm not as excited. But I'm always excited to see who texts me on my birthday.
Oh, right.
Because it's
Well,
you're either dead to me or
Right.
you're my new favorite person.
Your mother used to say that when she was young. She said, if they don't text me for my birthday,
Well,
I'm
she
not
didn't
gonna
have
be-"
texting.
No, not but calls.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It wasn't texting. You're right. It was calling. But she would keep a list. She would know.
Really?
Yeah. And you want to know the truth? Most of her friends always remembered. I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, her friends are good about that
Yeah.
stuff. Like
Yeah,
they
she is
text
very
me on my
loyal.
birthday before I get texts from my own friends.
Well,
so.
that's part of. I guess when we grew up, we were supposed to do that, so that stays, ingrained in your brain.
But like, what ex-boyfriends are gonna text me?
I don't think any.
What? I'm counting on it.
Well, don't count on it because it's really ridiculous. They've all moved on, as you have. So don't worry. Look for the text.
Well, I'm doing just dinner on my actual birthday with you guys to celebrate, and then
And a friend.
and my friend who's
Right.
here.
Right.
And
I think we were thinking of actually going down to a restaurant called Oceana in Del Rey, which is fun. It's a chef. It's a very small, tiny place, and he makes whatever he likes each night. And hopefully you like what's on the menu. But the food's delicious. It's atmospheric, and we'll give you a report if we like it or not.
yeah. What were you doing at 27?
At 27, at that point, I had a little girl who was 4 years old, and
Maybe you were pregnant.
No, I probably was thinking about getting pregnant again.
Yeah.
Because I had a baby, and yes, that's true. I probably was pregnant because I had my son when I was 28. So, you know what? It was a different time. I was frustrated because I think your mother didn't sleep well. So she was always finding her way into my bedroom where I think it was pretty hard to get pregnant.
Yeah.
there was no closed door policy in those days. She'd just wander in and get in between the covers. But anyway, it was fun.
Do you remember how you celebrated your 27th?
I never cared about my birthdays.
Yeah.
I think I actually did milestones, big birthdays, 25th. The next one was the 40th that I really celebrated, and the 50th, whatever. And then it became so that I stopped celebrating. I always went out for dinner with my family and had lunch with some of my girlfriends, but it became less important because I didn't feel like doing it anymore. When you're young, the birthdays seem to be so important. As you get older, you're looking forward to another one, so you don't care about it.
Let's do Grandma Gail's headlines of the week. You are very up to date in news and always are telling me about things. So what did you want to discuss this week?
Well, the first thing was anybody who listened to our podcast last week and really listened to it knew that Kimmy is obsessed with long gloves, that we saw them coming out in the Grammys, and we've seen Princess Kate of the UK is also now wearing them, wore them to the BAFTA Awards in London. And I think that trend, which we saw clearly, is now getting publicized it was in the Post this morning with pictures of all the people
and
wearing
I've seen
the long
influencers
gloves.
kind of wearing them for videos as well. I just don't know where they're going with the gloves.
Well, I think you have to go to a special night. I
Yeah.
think it would look ridiculous going to the movies.
If
in
it's
long
like a
gloves.
fashion event.
Yeah, a fashion event or a wedding or a very lavish maybe birthday party that's fun that someone's throwing for themselves or anything like that. I think it has to be an occasion. I don't think you walk around with like Kate had long black gloves on, which were fabulous with her white dress.
Does it have to be cold out to wear the gloves?
I don't think so at all. They wore them in the Grammys and it was warm out there.
True.
I think it's just a fashion statement.
Don't your hands get sweaty?
I don't know. I don't think technically we should worry about
Oh,
that.
okay.
I think if it's 100 degrees, it would look sort of silly to
Yeah.
wear the long gloves. But I do think that they're a pretty accessory, and right now it seems to be very much in vogue. And the other thing that I wanted to say is, I love Venice. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. And one of the great things about Venice, it's a water city. That you go around on a vaporetto or on a gondola, and you go from different little docks to the other docks to go to either a restaurant or a gallery or wherever you're visiting. And that's so much a part of, remember we took the gondola trips around the canals, and
Yes.
it's so much a part of the tradition there. Well, guess what? They have no water. Europe is completely, it really has had very, very little rainfall.
That
So-
just sounds like a headline to me.
No, it's not a headline. It's a terrible
there's
disaster.
there's no water. I
The
doubt that.
canals have like an inch and a half of water in some of them, so the boats can't
So
go out at all.
What do they need? Like a rainy day?
I think they said that in the paper this morning it needs 50 inches of rain to fall. Now that's really like a monsoon. They're hoping, I guess the rainy months are April and May. And they're hoping for large amounts of water to come in because, first of all, it's a tourist city.
Yeah.
It's very little things going on in the city that is not related to tourism. And if you can't get your tourists around, it's going to be a mess. So that's going to be a problem. Also,
so what are they doing like in the meantime?
I don't think I don't know what they're doing. I guess the tourists are on the mainland and they can't really go to
It's
different
so funny
places.
'cause
They
when
have
we-
to walk because there are no cars.
When we were there over the summer, remember it was
No,
like
not summer, May. Yeah, the middle of May.
Okay.
So middle of May, we had a lot of water.
there was a lot of water. It was like flooding into the square.
That's correct. At night, at high tide,
Yeah.
we were there when that's what they're saying. The moon and somehow everything is La Nina. All these factors are causing the drought. And they're having, first of all, now I was also thinking, and they're waiting for the Po River, which I guess flows into the canals in Venice to start filling up. I was thinking about what about all the vegetation and the farms and
Yeah.
that are around Venice. Forget the city of Venice itself, but it's in a very rich part of Italy, and they must be suffering terribly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's awful, and that's one side. It's tragic as far as tourism, but then I was thinking of the other things that have been going on with weather, and that's the terrible earthquakes that hit Turkey and Syria the last couple of weeks. It's mind-boggling that a 7.7, a 7 point whatever earthquake literally brought down buildings and over 30,000 deaths occurred. So, nature is a very, very strong element in our world, and we forget about it so much because we take it for granted. I don't think we forget about it, but we take it for granted that all the seasons will be natural and will all replenish each other, going from one to the other.
Well, just like out of our control, a lot of
Correct.
it. So then what do you do when it's
You can do very little.
Yeah.
I can remember reading in John Steinbeck in The Grapes of Wrath with the Great Depression when you had no rain out in the Midwest and we had no wheat and you had no food. And that's very much what happens. Nature,
we should have technology though that like bypasses nature.
Well, I think what has happened, let's say in the state of Israel, they've had, because they had no water, they grew everything hydroponically. And they irrigated underneath, they took the water from the sea, took the salt out of it, and managed to grow beautiful gardens and vegetables, and they became a producer of great fruits and vegetables for all over Europe, and as well as shipping melons and all kinds of produce to the United States and around the world. But I think that takes an awful lot of technology, and it's very hard to do in a large country. In Israel, which is a tiny little area, I can understand how they did it. But in the United States, or even in China or Russia or wherever, it's very, very difficult,
Yeah.
and it becomes a hardship for everyone when one area becomes disrupted. Very much like the wheat that came from the Ukraine, that was the breadbasket of the world, is now disrupted because of war. So you have shortages of bread. and bread in our supermarkets. It's all affected. It's a one world. It's globalization where the one country depends on another country. So I think we have to start really planning things and try to help our neighbors. In Venice has nothing to do with we can't help them. They have to hope that nature is forgiving and all of a sudden really starts to rain.
And then the last headline that you laid out for me on the counter in the paper was how all these influencers are doing plastic surgery
right.
and talking very openly about it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think plastic surgery, as was mentioned in this article, has always been around. People who wanted to have rhinoplasty and things like that have existed since the 50s, because everybody didn't want to have a big nose. Somebody wanted to have a small nose, or other people wanted to have that was always a common occurrence. But I think what's happened is it's not only it's the amount of Botox, fillers, changing your whole face according to what maybe some of the stars look like, and trying
or like
to
an
emulate
Instagram
them.
filter that makes your face look like that. You're used to looking at yourself like that, and then you want to look like that.
And I think that is no good, because the problem is, really, if you must know the truth, and we're all actually products of this, is looking at selfies.
Yeah.
And you constantly are looking at yourself. Before, nobody looked at themselves 24/7.
But if someone wants to do it, like, whatever.
Well, I wouldn't shame anybody.
Yeah.
I think what happens is, if you start at 24 and 25 with fillers and everything else, by the time you're 50 or 60, you start looking like a plastic mask. You don't have any expression. So I think there's an overuse of it. I think a little bit, if you feel that you have a wrinkle somewhere in your forehead, if you did it, isn't so terrible. But when you start putting the injectables in your lips and your cheeks and all these other areas that some of these girls are doing, you don't look really like yourself.
Yeah.
And that to me is no good.
So it's not only just about doing it, but it's about how a lot of influencers are showing their whole process before, like during, after, and talking so openly about it. And I don't know how I feel about it yet. I mean, I don't like if people are doing it like for views, but I guess, if they're being transparent. Like, the only time I feel like it gets shady is when people are like hiding what they're doing.
Well, I think a lot of them are probably represented by some of the drug companies. Some of these
I bet
girls.
they're getting a lot
And
of it
they're
for free.
I'm sure they're getting it for free because they're advertising it, which I don't approve of. Because
Probably
this is
not like a
medical-
whole breast augmentation, but like Botox for sure.
Well, they had this thing where the teacher in New York had like I don't even know the size. She was like an H breast, and she loved it, and she had like 2 balloons.
Yeah.
I think that going on a video is not helpful for young people's self-images. Forget people who are in their 20s. Their brain is somewhat developed by the time you're 25. But a child of 16, 17, 18, an impressionable youngster, a teenager, I think that's the problem of looking too much on the phones and on your the social media. And I do agree that parents have to limit youngsters who look at it. Once you're in your 20s, hopefully you're a mature adult, and you should know better, and you know how much or how little to use. And a lot of these people are gorgeous women anyway. So they're on TV, or they're on their phones, or they're on whatever they're doing, their social media channels, and they're doing it for a living. The normal person who's going to school or going to college or going to wherever their jobs don't need to be that extremely into having any of these beauty enhancements, I don't think. But if they want to, good for them. As long as their family approves or their partner approves, it's fine.
Okay, speaking of social media, wanted to go over some of the videos that we did this week. One of them was how to take a selfie, because sometimes there's a bit of a technology difference
Oh,
between
absolutely.
generations. So do you feel like you know how to do it now?
Well, it's so funny you said this because last night I was back at the Kravis
Mm-hmm.
at a show which featured John Hurley, the Mr. Biederman in Seinfeld, and he did a musical review of his what he thinks is his hits. But a woman was sitting behind me who introduced herself and said, "My daughter loves you. Could we take a selfie?" She had just seen
To you?
Yes, to
Yeah,
me.
okay.
She had just seen our little thing on us on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Sure." And we did it, and we were very good. The two of us are about the same age, and she then sent it off.
That's
to her daughter.
great.
So that was fun. We really were able to do it.
So
the
did she say
flipping.
she learned from the video?
Well, I think she knew.
She probably
how.
knew.
I think she knew how. She was testing me. I
Well,
think she more than anything
yeah.
wanted to be together.
I wonder if we should do some more tech tutorials if people found it useful. People were like, great job, but I don't know if they necessarily were learning.
Well, I don't think the people who probably said great job were probably new already.
Yeah.
It's the people who are over 60 who have a little issue with it, and if they have questions, let them text you, and we'll try to answer the questions as best we can. You know how to answer it.
Yeah.
I'm not the one that can.
We also did a video, one of our not my type videos. You said date someone who texts you back, and I said not my type as a joke, just because so many girls just love when a guy doesn't text them back because it just creates a game. We know it's not right, but it is what it is, and that got over 1 million views, and people were definitely siding with you, Grandma.
I think most people side with me. The only
Yeah.
one we ever have, the only one we had a little fallback on was the rule that I said that the person in front of you at the time of your life when you're ready is the person you probably end up with. And I still stand by that, even though I've gotten a lot of people who negatively that don't agree with me. I still think timing in life is everything.
Okay, should we answer some questions that listeners wrote in?
Sure, Kim.
Okay, what was the beauty industry like when you grew up?
Oh, it was very, very. Well, it was Helena Rubinstein, Elizabeth Arden, and Estee Lauder. I think those were the major companies, the American companies at that time that really captivated everyone's imagination. They had beautiful products, They had spas. Actually, Elizabeth Arden did that catered to women and to how to show people how to make up properly because they were pushing their products naturally. Well, there was no social media, so you had to get it either in magazines, which you saw somebody putting on something that you identified with. But they were very big influences on everyone because people were just learning after the war. When you came out of the 40s and you went into the 50s, women were starting to want to become glamorous again. We've discussed this before. Wartime breaks cycles. So when war is over, you go back into having more lighthearted activities. And one of them was beautifying women. That was a very big thing in the 50s and actually late 40s and 50s. And so I think it was a very big influence, and people started taking it seriously. The department stores all carried many, many different makeup products. Of course, it's much larger today and has so many things that it's international, really. So I think it's always been taken seriously, but it went down to the ordinary woman at home. It wasn't only for the wealthy. It was for everyone. Everyone wanted to look pretty, whether they lived on a farm or they lived in a big city. People started to taking care of their skin, and the companies realized that and were reaching their customers as best they could.
We have so many questions about like Palm Beach recommendations, so I think we're going to make a video on that. But in the meantime, one person said, asking for my fiance. He has a bachelor party in Palm Beach coming up. What bars should he go to? Cucina. It's limited options. But there are a lot
of Colony, probably at night.
I wouldn't say that for a bachelor party. Maybe like in West Palm Beach, they have Bradley's. 1, 2, 3, 4 bars like that.
Yeah,
those are my recs.
I don't think this is a big bachelor location.
I don't know. I think it kind of
Maybe if you go down to the into Miami, there would be much more fun for a bachelor party. Palm Beach is sort of everything shuts down by 11.
Yeah, that's true. Do you use hair curlers?
No, I don't. I used to put little, the rollers that
Like the Velcro.
the Velcro.
Yeah.
Thank you. I used to put that in just to, if I have something in between when I have my hair blown by a professional. But I have short hair, so I don't really bother with it. I just, it looks what it looks like. It looks good for a day, and then it's just all right. But I don't worry about it too much because it's all about the cut. For short hair, long hair is different, but short hair, if you have a basic cut on it, you can put your hair back and it sort of works.
We always get, where do you get your hair cut? Will you always have short hair? And will you always keep blonde hair?
Well, I didn't always have blonde hair, as some of the pictures now you show on Instagram.
They're mostly still blonde. The pictures I've posted.
Yeah, well, those were
I don't think there's...
Because I think after I had my son, which was... oh my God, 1970, which is now 43 years ago, my hair started changing. Maybe it took on the color. A lot of the color was very dull. And I started putting little bits of streaks in, not a lot, because I was a brunette. So I put in little streaks, and then somehow it got red, and I had to go and take the red out, because usually with brown hair, when you do highlights, it does turn very red, and I didn't like that. So somehow each year I got blonder and blonder, and now I'm certainly not going to go back to brown. I did try that once. And I liked it, but your poppy hated it. So it's funny. You get used to a certain look, and people sort of like you like that. And I got used to it too.
Someone wrote in, it's really hard to see my parents age. What's Grandma Gail's advice to cope with that?
Grin and bear it, because everybody gets old, including you. Age is a stage that you have. It's sometimes if you age well, it's wonderful. Sometimes your parents don't age well, and it's sad, and you have to take care of them, or you have to have someone help you. But age is a natural part of life. It's birth and aging and death. So there's very little you can do about it. And, enjoy them at each stage and understand that it's just a natural cycle.
Okay, we can end it there. Thank you guys for listening week after week. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about specifically. Follow us on social media if you don't already. Excuse My Grandma on Instagram and TikTok. And we'll see you next week.